When a ruthless governor expels all immigrants from his country, a young Latin American is forced to volunteer to work in a nursing home and discovers that the elderly living there will soon be turned into hamburger. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, American Carnage, from 2022. In the city of Riverside, in the United States, JP, a descendant of immigrants who works in a drive-thru, has the misfortune of meeting an idiot who orders him to leave his country. However, as he is used to dealing with this kind of situation, JP manages to control himself and, through the microphone, announces to everyone that he is the victim of xenophobia. Embarrassed at having his action exposed, the man leaves and Lily drives up with her friends. After getting a milkshake, the young woman reveals that she has just been accepted at Columbia University and JP is happy for her, but saddened to learn that his sister will have to move to New York. At the end of his shift, the young man calls his mother to say he's sorry about Lily's move and tells her he's leaving. While alone in the locker room, JP is surprised by his best friend, who tries to scare him, but Scott's plan doesn't work out as expected and they walk home together. The next morning, JP congratulates his sister on being accepted at university and Lily says that he could have gotten a scholarship too. Upon hearing this, the young man says that he will open a business that will make him rich before his sister even leaves college and promises that very soon he will no longer be working at the drive-thru. Now that she's in a new phase of her life, Lily decided to get a tattoo and drew a butterfly behind her left ear to symbolize freedom. To celebrate her success, her family throws a party and June decides to make a speech in which she says she is extremely proud of her daughter. Just then, while everyone is gathered, a group of policemen break down the door and invade the family home to arrest all the immigrants. This happened because Governor Finn declared a sudden state of emergency and issued a surprise executive order in which he ordered all illegal immigrants in the country to be arrested. From the state of California alone, more than 2 million people have been detained. By order of the governor, the children of these immigrants must also be detained, even if they were born in the United States. During this operation, JP ends up being separated from his family and has to live in a cell as a criminal with other young people his age. Lisa is a lawyer who is fighting to have the decree issued by the governor annulled, but the judge has refused to interfere. So she plans to appeal to the Supreme Court and reveals that, on election day, Finn plans to have all the detained immigrants deported. At this point, JP discovers that the only way to prevent his mother from being deported is to become an American citizen. As he was born in the United States, he will be able to go through the process of getting a green card and then he will have to include his mother as a member of his family. That way, everyone can go home and get on with their lives. The problem is that, while in state custody, the young man will not be able to lodge any complaints with the courts. So, in order to gain his freedom, he will have to become a volunteer at a retirement home and help look after the elderly people who live there. Since he has no other choice, JP, like many other children of immigrants, is preparing to take part in the program. Before being sent to the nursing home, they are informed that they will have no contact with the outside world while they are inside. Upon arriving at the nursery home, the group meets Director Eddie, who is responsible for supervising them for the next 3 months. The man then thanks the young people for their help and says that if they follow the program correctly, they will certainly come out of the experience more mature. The director then introduces Cindy and James and says that they will present the house to the volunteers. Basically, their job is to entertain the residents with games and make sure they have a good time while they enjoy their last years of life. However, as they walk around the mansion and meet the elderly, JP and some other volunteers realize that they are being watched in a strange way. After lunch, it's time to start work and the young people split up to interact with the old people. At Mika's suggestion, JP decides to read a book to the old woman in the wheelchair. However, during the reading, she interrupts him and, in a desperate voice, says that the young man will be eliminated in that place. Hearing the woman's screams, Cindy decides to sedate her and takes her to her room. During dinner, Chris reveals that he hasn't eaten anything since he arrived at the nursery home because he's afraid of being poisoned. The young man says that he is planning to escape because he knows that the officials are on the prowl, waiting for the right moment to eliminate them. Annoyed by this conspiracy theory, Big Mac orders him to shut up and eat his dinner, but instead Chris gets up and tries to leave the cafeteria. Just then, 2 guards approach and use a stun gun to electrocute him. They then drag the young man out. During the night, JP hears a noise and leaves his room to investigate. He walks sleepily down the corridor when his anklet starts beeping, indicating that the young man is out of his quarters. After a quick trip to the bathroom, he walks back to his room and doesn't even realize he's being followed. When he gets to the room, he finds a naked lady begging for someone called Virgil to be released. The woman then manages to knock JP down and starts screaming. Immediately, James and 2 other employees appear and, after sedating Mrs. Wells, take her to the infirmary. In the morning, Director Eddie apologizes for what happened to JP and says that he will present the rest of the retirement home to the young people. As they walk through the corridors, Big Mac and Camilla wonder where Chris is, as he hasn't been seen since dinner. At this point, the volunteers arrive at Ward B, where all the elderly people who have been diagnosed with advanced dementia or Alzheimer's are. The director says that the night before, for some reason, someone left the door of that room open and Mrs. Wells escaped. Seeing those elderly people in a vegetative state, JP is saddened and offers to help with palliative care. Then, when all his colleagues have left the room, James asks the young man to get Mr. Yates out of his wheelchair and onto a stretcher. When he realizes that the old man is handcuffed to the chair, JP asks why he is being held and James says that the old man is very violent. Seeing that the employee is making fun of Mr. Yates, the young man asks him not to and ends up on James's blacklist. Suddenly, Mr. Mason appears and violently bites JP's arm. At that moment, James attacks the old man and the young man ends up fainting from the injury. When he wakes up, the young man finds Lily and discovers that she has also been sent to volunteer at the nursing home. However, it isn't long before his dream turns into a nightmare and JP wakes up. He then realizes that none of it was real. After being bitten, he blacked out for half an hour and, when he regained consciousness, asked how Mr. Mason was. However, Micah says she doesn't know what happened to him. During the conversation, the two friends complain about the way the elderly are treated there, as the staff see them more as animals than as people who need care. At lunch, once again, the group wonders where Chris is and, when questioning Cindy, Camilla discovers that he has been sent back to the detention center, because that's what happens when someone tries to escape. When the woman leaves, Big Mac tells them that she was lying because he found Chris's inhaler in the hallway and says that his asthmatic friend would never leave without it. That night, the young man goes to Mr. Phillips' room and tries to turn on the TV to cheer him up, as he has been informed that the old man is not well. Suddenly, the old man raises his hand and his fingers start to twist. At that moment, Phillips stops breathing and Big Mac despairs when he realizes that he has perished. However, the young man is surprised when, from one moment to the next, the old man stands up and his whole body begins to twist. At this point, the old man turns into a terrifying monster and Big Mac flees in terror while Greta is left alone with the creature. The next morning, Director Eddie meets with all the volunteers in the courtyard to inform them of Mr. Phillips' tragic perishment and reveals that he had a neurological illness. However, Big Mac reveals to his friend that the old man has turned into a monster and says that it was the most disturbing scene he has ever seen in his life. After his speech, Eddie asks JP to accompany him to the garden and introduces Virgil, the owl responsible for keeping the invasive birds away from the place. The truth is that the director has called JP and James to help them make up, as he has noticed that there is a disagreement between them, and orders the two employees to hug. In doing so, JP steals his coworker's keys and manages to use them to remove his anklet. That evening, he pays a visit to Big Mac and Camilla and invites them to take a dip in the pool. He then goes to Mika's room and removes her anklet. During a conversation by the pool, the couple kiss and the girl takes JP to her room. The next morning, when he wakes up, the young man sees Mrs. Wilcox and is startled. Then Micah appears and reveals that she has been looking for her everywhere. So the young woman takes the old woman back to her room and JP is relieved to know that it was all just a misunderstanding. A few hours later, when he saw Greta in the garden, the young man approached her and asked if someone had given her that paper, as his sister used to make exactly the same folds. At that moment, the old woman holds JP's hand tightly, but can't say anything at all. Realizing what's going on, Cindy and James decide to intervene once again and refer the woman to Ward B, as she has already caused some trouble in recent days. When he meets up with his friends again, JP discovers that they don't remember anything that happened after the swimming pool. In addition, Camilla wakes up with a mark on the back of her neck and the group soon realizes that there is something very strange going on there. Alone in his room, JP looks at the paper Greta was holding and, when he opens one of the folds, he finds a plea for help. So that night, the young man sneaks out once again and goes to Ward B to look for the woman. Suddenly, Cindy and James show up to double the dosage of the old woman's sedative and JP manages to hide under the bed. As the pair leave, he spots a tattoo behind Greta's ear identical to the one Lily got the day she found out she was going to college, and despairs when he realizes that the lady is actually his sister. Terrified, JP immediately leaves the room and runs into James, who hits him hard. The next day, over lunch, his friends miss the young man and decide to go and look for him. While Camilla stands guard, Big Mac and Micah break into the staff room and start looking for any files linked to Chris or JP. Rummaging through the drawers, Big Mac finds the blueprints for a machine and discovers that Chris was one of the guinea pigs. Just then, they hear Camilla talking to James outside and realize that their friend is trying to buy time so that they can hide. When the man leaves the room, the pair manage to escape and have no idea that, at that very moment, JP is going through the aging process. As he tries to explain to Camilla what he has discovered, he is interrupted by James, who orders the young man to fix the vent. Then, while he's working, an elderly man tries to attack Cindy and is interrupted by Bruce, who pushes him against the stairs and accidentally knocks Big Mac down. At this point, Cindy contacts James and orders him to send a nurse to the place. When he sees the woman leaving, JP manages to memorize the password and, at the first opportunity, makes his escape. A few kilometers away, Director Eddie meets with Governor Finn to talk about the new hamburger joint they have opened, which serves the meat of immigrants who have gone to the nursery home. When he is taken to the infirmary, Big Mac pretends to be unconscious in order to overhear Cindy and Bruce's conversation. Meanwhile, JP crawls through the lab until he reaches the door and, after typing in the password, manages to open it. Minutes later, James misses the young man and realizes that he has run away. So he goes after him and asks his colleagues to help him find him. During the escape, JP comes across the machine that the director has built and discovers that he is packaging the bodies of the elderly who have died like animals in a refrigerator. Their meat is then turned into hamburgers and served at the new fast food chain created by the governor. Seeing this terrifying scene, JP runs for the exit, where he meets Micah. The young man reveals that all the elderly people in the nursery home have been transformed, just like him, and says that his friends need to escape before they go through the same process. Just then, James appears and the young man orders him to stay away. What JP doesn't realize is that Micah is also an employee of the nursery home and uses a sedative to put him out. When he wakes up, the young man is in front of Director Eddie and accuses him of being a bloody cannibal. However, the man claims that he never ate any of those hamburgers and reveals that he sent Micah to spy on the youngsters all along. While talking to Eddie, JP discovers that Lisa, his lawyer, knew all along what was happening there and was working together with the governor to send the young people to the nursery home. The director thanks JP and the other immigrants who arrived in the country to offer their labor in exchange for very little money. However, with the advent of technology, Americans no longer need these people to do the jobs that no one else wants to do, because machines are doing it all automatically. Therefore, according to Eddie, immigrants must now contribute the only thing they have to offer: their flesh. That night, when she is alone in her room, Camilla tries to open her anklet and suddenly a key pops out of the pipe. She soon realizes that it's Big Mac who's up there and, while Cindy and James welcome the new volunteers, Camilla takes the opportunity to escape from her room. The young woman then heads to the dining room and uses a chair to break the window. At this point, she discovers that there are numerous security cameras scattered throughout the mansion and is captured by one of the guards. Talking to Micah, JP asks what happened to his sister and the young woman reveals that, like all the immigrants, Lily has been drugged since she arrived at the nursery home. These substances are dissolved in small quantities in the water and food served to the volunteers to keep them calm and prevent them from trying to escape. After going through the aging process, young people have various hormones injected into their veins to make their meat tender and fit for consumption. Finally, when these elderly people are about to die, their bodies begin to self-destruct and they squirm violently before taking their last breath. After hearing this cruel description coming from a psychopath, JP begins to cry and is shocked by the coldness with which Micah tells him about these murders. A few hours later, when he returns to the laboratory, he meets Camilla and discovers that she is also old. Together, they think of a plan to escape from the place and plan to carry it out after dinner. When he meets Lily again, JP tries to communicate with her and manages to make her remember the good things they experienced with their mother. At that moment, the two brothers get emotional and JP promises that very soon they will be out of that hellish place. That night, when Micah and the other staff enter the room to apply the sedatives to the old people, they discover that they have formed a riot and the old people unite to attack them while JP runs for help. Suddenly, Bruce appears and starts chasing him. Immediately, the young man runs into the warehouse and, as soon as the guard comes in after him, JP jumps on his neck. However, as his body has aged, he doesn't have enough strength to stop Bruce and is violently attacked while Camilla and the other elderly people try to eliminate the employees. Meanwhile, Big Mac continues to crawl through the vent and sees his friend being hanged by the guard. At that moment, he jumps into the room and uses a hose to strangle Bruce. Then, with JP's help, the young man manages to get rid of him. Then the alarm goes off and Big Mac helps his friend escape. On the way, he spots another guard and tries to take him down while the elderly start a real war against the nursing home staff. In the midst of the confusion, the pair run off and meet Camilla, who is pushing Lily's wheelchair. Suddenly, James appears and tries to attack JP, but is stopped by Big Mac, who who buys time for his friends to escape. After taking the elevator down, the trio ends up in the basement and JP leaves to look for a way out while Camilla stays with his sister. At that moment, Big Mac is leading a revolution and plans to destroy the whole place. After leaving the nursery home, he meets a woman who was jogging nearby and asks to borrow her phone. However, when she sees that she is surrounded by dozens of elderly people, she panics and flees in her car. While walking through the basement, JP meets Chris and the young man says he tried to warn them. Suddenly, Eddie appears and attacks him. The director is furious and plans to eliminate the immigrant who destroyed his entire empire, but JP manages to fight back and hits him with a glass container. After freeing himself from his enemy's clutches, he picks up a baseball bat and tries to hit him, but Eddie is quicker and injures the young man's head. When JP passes out, the man takes him to the machine and intends to chop him up, but Camilla appears just in time and attacks the director with a piece of wood. She then pulls her friend off the treadmill and ends up being caught by Eddie, who throws her away. While the director holds JP's neck, Chris begins to squirm and Lily opens the door of the cage where he is being held. During the process of transforming his body, Chris grabs Eddie's jaw and manages to eliminate the director by pulling with all his might. At this point, the man falls onto the treadmill and his body is turned into hamburger while JP helps Camilla and his sister escape. Relieved to have gotten rid of the carnage, the trio decide to take a nap and are found by Big Mac. After the whole nursery home scandal hit the headlines, the fast food chain founded by Eddie was closed down and the governor had to flee the country to avoid being arrested. While scientists try to find a way to reverse the aging process that the young people have gone through, the Legislative Assembly has suspended the decree expelling the immigrants, who will now be able to reunite with their families. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.